In this short addition to the project, we're going to look at how we can have a play again or try again, do over, however you want to frame it. So what it's going to require us to do is to add in an additional button element. And this one, I'll just put the text on it again. And I will give it an ID so I can find it through code. And once again, we can just add it down here. Document query, query selector. I was hoping code hinting, but because I had done the text content, it forgot what I had there. No big deal. All right, so now we have our again button. So now I'm going to just pause for a moment on adding new code. I need to talk about something here, and that is the order of things in our program. So if we look, we'll see that I have the function down here that is being referenced in the line up here. So technically this line is happening before the function is encountered in our code. And in the process of doing that, we are effectively hijacking this function and pulling it to an earlier section in our code. So there's a couple of ways that we could go about doing this. One is that after we have initialized all of our variables, then we put all of our functions, then we list the event listeners that reference the functions that have already been defined in our code. That would be a way that we could go about doing it, and that would be a good order of operation. Now in this case, this doesn't cause an error, but if we were to set the function as an object, so instead of writing it like this, so if I were to say let again button handler equal function, which is a perfectly legitimate way of listing a function. So we list it as a variable object, and that's a normal way that we will encounter functions in JavaScript at times. If we do that and then add event listener, click, again, button handler, false. So if we do it this way, we're running into a problem because now it's trying to access what is in essence a variable object that doesn't exist yet. So that causes a problem. So if we're going to ever write our functions using this syntax, we need to make certain that that function is defined before we try to use it. So if we do it that way, then that would work. So I'm just pointing this out because sometimes as you will reference other code that you find online or in tutorials or in a textbook, it will define a function using the let function name equal or var function name equal function with the keyword versus just saying function and the name of the function. So it's important to understand that there is a difference between them, and we have to be aware of that while we are working. But now if I do it like this, it's going to be fine to put our event listeners and then define our functions. So the technical term in JavaScript is that what we're doing here, we're hijacking it to allow the function to be used even though we're calling it before the line shows up inside our code with the information that we need. So now with the again button, what we can do is we can add or subtract from our class list. So this is a great opportunity. I can just paste that in. And now what we want to do with the input panel, we want to remove display none, and the output panel, add display none. Now let's save this and take a look and see how this is going. Put in Fred, put in pink, hit, and now we have an again button. Now let's look at our code here, and we can see inside that main section, we can see display none is on the input panel. I click again, and now we can see it left, and now it's over here. But we still have information in the form fields. So what would be nice is to clear that out or to reset them. And it's a pretty straightforward process to do so. In our code here, what we can do is go in and choose our input name, and we can set the value of that equal to an empty string. So that now wipes out the content that is there. Input color value, set that to an equal string as well. Console, no errors. Let's just repeat the process. Fred, pink, submit. Again. So now we're in an endless loop. Things are working perfect, and we're in good shape. Now working with the color, just referencing it by name and text is okay, but what would be nice is to take a chance and what if we were to set the background color? Now notice I camel cased the word background color here. And if I were to say be in my style, so if we were to body background color, notice it's a hyphenated term. So anytime we're directly setting or assigning style information with the JavaScript and accessing those style properties, if it's a hyphenated term like background color, then what we can do is we can camel case it, and the JavaScript is going to then understand it. So we set it equal to the background color, and then here, and we'll set our background color back equal to white. So if the person says white, if we go pink, let's see how this works. And we've run into a little hitch. Body is not defined. So we have an error. And I'm trying to access the body, but if we look, I never actually did that. Not body, query selector. This time we'll just go body. So I forgot to do that. And because I was thinking of body, document, there we go, because here it says cannot access body before initialization, error at line 48. Line 48 right here, let body equal One of these days I'll get through my coding demo with 0 errors, but the good part is when I have those errors, you can try and learn from them as to how I solve those problems when they occur. You can now say went to pink, now it's back to white, and if I were to grab green, it goes to green, and if I were to create a color of barf, submit, nothing happened. Go back here. And there's no error, because when we try and assign a style value, and if there is no value there, it just doesn't do anything. That's part of the beauty of HTML and CSS is when you are writing it, if there are mistakes in what you've written, it doesn't break your page. Your page will work just in unpredictable ways. What's predictable if you know what you're looking for, but it's unpredictable in that you're expecting something to happen and something doesn't. You're left wondering, well, why didn't that happen? So if we choose a color that's not on our predefined color list, so if we look here to get a sense of a lot of the colors that are available, we can see we have a lot of named colors that if I choose one of those colors, it will work. So if someone were to type it in exactly like that, notice they're not camel cased. So if we chose something like light salmon, or moccasin, or pale goldenrod, pale violet red, okay, so if we choose that, it works. So someone would have to know to type that in. But if they type in pale, what is it? Pale violet red and submit, nothing happened. Now it goes back to white because that's what we put in the code. But if you notice, if I hit submit, so if we refresh the page entirely, look, see, nothing. My favorite color is as well, welcome, comma, period. So we might want to put a little bit of checking here, perhaps, to encourage the user to fill out the form. And this is one of the very common things that happens in JavaScript. You come to a form and it says this is a required field, and it won't exit the form or process the form until you have filled in all of the required fields. And some forms will then even go so far as to check the contents that you've provided to see if they match any predetermined required patterns like an email or a phone number. So how do we check? Well, the answer is a conditional statement. So we're going to use an if-else statement. There are other ways that we could go about it, but this is a pretty straightforward, direct manner of doing that. So I'm going to write it out in more plain language, and then we will convert that into code. So I'm going to say if name is empty, then, and now it's going to get grumpy with me because I'm not using real code, then warn user to fill out name field. Else, if color is empty, then warn user to fill out color. Else, process the form. And if. I'm going to just put all of this into comments. Quick and easy is Command/ on Mac or Control/ on Windows. The slash matching, that particular slash. Two slashes, if you type them, turn something to a comment. But I can very quickly Command/ will comment and uncomment things, so I don't have to click and then type two slashes, click, delete two slashes. It's Command/ to comment or uncomment. Control/ if you are on Windows, of course. So I'm using an if statement. So I'm creating a logic tree. So I'm asking a question. If name is empty is true, then I'm going to tell the user, hey, you need to fill out the name field. Else, if the color input field is empty, so they didn't put anything in there, then we're going to warn the user to fill out the color field. Otherwise, let's go ahead and do what we've done before, which is process the form. So we need to write out an if using our proper JavaScript syntax, and we also need to learn how to do a warning in JavaScript. On the MDN WebDocs page, we can see the information for using an alert. So window.alert, so it will create an alert with a particular message. So you've seen these when you fill out forms, you've seen these when you try to leave a page before completing, say, a shopping experience, and you've seen it through obnoxious pop-ups where malware sites are trying to do things to your computer and scare you with different things. So we can see how by putting in that text, it's going to then pop up the information where by using window alert, then it's going to pop up the hello world in this case because that's the message that is there. So pretty straightforward technical thing to look at. So let's now look at how we implement this. So in JavaScript, to do a conditional statement or a if-else statement, I say if, and now my situation that I'm wondering is true, then we do some curly braces. And now inside here, do something. Else if, and in the parentheses, I define what I'm checking to determine if it's true. Do something else. Else, this is our final one. So in this case, our conditional is exhaustive. We've exhausted all possibilities because we have two inputs. So we have our first one and our second one. And our only situation is I filled out the first one. And if that is true, then we're going to go and fill out the next one. And then it checks. So we first check for name, then we check for color. Now, if they didn't fill in the name, it will stop the conditional right here and do that. If they didn't fill out the color, but they filled out a name, it stops the conditional right here. So those are our kind of two options that we can be looking at. So if one of those situations happens, it does those items. Otherwise, it will do the default, which is what we want to have happen, which is to execute and process the information from those inputs, change which panel is on display, change the color, rewrite the text, etc. So now what we can do is say input name dot value. Got to type it right. So if input name dot value is, and now when we're comparing something, we use two equal signs. When we're assigning a value, we use a single equal sign. So that's how we do it in JavaScript. And then if we're comparing something and we need it to be not only that same value, but of the same type of object, then we can even use 3 equal signs. In this case, 2 or 3 is going to give us the same result for what we need, so it doesn't really matter. And I'll go down here and put this one in. Input color dot value, and remember we need to put in the dot value part. 2 equal signs because we're comparing, so that's really important. So it says if this statement is true, input name value is empty. Now we're going to do something, and that something that we are going to do is window.warn, and now we have our message that we can put in there. And the message will be, please provide your name. Now we can save this. And window.warn is not a function because I was thinking about providing a warning. And what I'm looking for is alert, because as I've read through here and started typing, we have console.warn, but it's window.alert. Now let's save that. Go back here. I didn't put in a name. It comes up and says, please provide your name. Oh, and it went ahead because these are now not, I haven't moved them over yet, so they're where I don't want them. I'm just going to remove that. And let's go window.alert. Please tell me your favorite color. So now let's see. Okay, refresh. Please tell me your favorite color. Okay. All right. So now we just need to relocate those items here. And if I use Command or Control on the square bracket key, it moves it over so we get proper indenting. Anytime we start putting curly braces inside of curly braces, it really becomes important to pay attention to our indent so that our code is clean and easy to read. So if I look at what I wrote in English, if name is empty, then warn the user to fill out the name field. Else, if color is empty, warn the user, change the word warn to alert, and then that'd match what we typed here. Else, process the form. So if the input name is empty, alert, provide your name. Else, if the color is empty, alert, provide your color. Else, do what we were doing previously. So now let's try it. Submit, provide my name. Okay, fine. Submit, provide a color. Okay, fine. Now submit. Okay, good. Now let's go back. Welcome where, favorite color is green. Good. And now we are back to where we were before. And I click again, and it's like, please provide your name. So we've started to troubleshoot the whole process. We have been able to check the form, provide warnings. Now another option beyond using the warning on this is we could have a paragraph or a headline, or we could make the text show up next to an element that provided the contents in on the page instead of using an alert box. Some people are bothered by alert boxes, or they find they are, especially in a shopping cart situation, can be very off-putting, that it makes people uncomfortable because they think something dramatic or bad is happening. So while we're not going to add additional text onto the screen or add node elements into our document, whether we would have them in there hidden or we would be adding them dynamically by creating nodes or elements in JavaScript, what we will do is we'll just do a real simple we'll make a class. We'll call it red. And this will just have a background color of red. And what I can do is I can very simply, in addition to my alert, we can set the class name here equal to red. And we'll repeat that over here for input color. Class name equals red. So let's save this and see how this looks. Pull up the console. Submit. Nope. So we can see it goes red. All right. Now we can move on. Go submit here. Color fine. All right. Hey, now that turned red. Put that in. Excellent. Almost. So if we're going to do something like that, we do need to undo that. And we can very easily just nuke the classes that are on there. And we can just do our input color. Let's do it in order. So input name dot class name equals nothing. And input color dot class name equals empty string as well. Let's save it, test one more time. Color, we'll just do one of them. All right. Submit, go back. So we're good to go. So there are a multitude of different ways we can do it. Right now we're just trying to keep things relatively straightforward and simple so that it doesn't become overwhelming, as this is really the first project where we're doing more than declarative JavaScript, but we're actually putting a little bit of logic into it. We even have an if statement that is now processing what has happened, as well as gaining control of all of the elements on our page. So the next step for you would be to then think about how to put this together into a larger project with more input fields, with a theme, images, colors, fonts, design the heck out of it so it becomes your project.